Hey girl, hey, and welcome to the Self-Love Fix podcast, where we get relatable, we share tea, and we support each other on this journey of self-love, self-worth, personal development, self-esteem, and self-care. Because why wait until it's too late to start becoming the best version of ourselves? Let's start today. And I'm your host, Beatrice. So let's get into it. Welcome back to the Self-Love Fix podcast. I am your host, Beatrice, and I just want to say I hope you're having a good week. We just passed hump day per usual because this podcast always comes out on Thursdays. But anyways, I hope you're having a good week, and I hope that you are going to have an even better weekend. Last week, we talked about gratitude and how important it is to show gratitude to yourself and to others, and to make it a lifestyle as opposed to just something you do in a moment of feeling thanks. And if you haven't checked it out, you should check it out, because honestly, I'm telling you, living a life of gratitude will change your life. It really will. So in the last episode, I mentioned doing IG lives, and I toyed with or dabbled into the idea of doing weekly lives. And then I realized, you know what? Wait, let me kind of slow it down, right? Because we're all about self-care here. I really want to get to do weekly lives, and I know we'll get to the point where we do weekly lives, but I also want to make sure to have content and topics that make sense to do lives. But I just kind of also want to play around with, does actually weekly lives work best, or is it monthly, or is it bi-weekly? So this week, I really want to talk about workplace wellness. So this podcast, I just want to emphasize, is all about, it is about self-love, but it's also about self-care. And I think one of the places where a lot of us, or maybe lack self-care in the most, is in the workplace, in terms of how we allow people to treat us, how we interact with people in places of authority, and even our coworkers, and how we allow ourselves to, how we're taking breaks, how productive we are or overproductive we are, all that kind of stuff. I think this is one area even I've noticed in myself that I'm like, I have to reevaluate this, because you don't want to work yourself to the bone, to the point where you have nothing left to give to your family, to your friends, to yourself at the end of the day. Like, how many of you feel so drained at the end of the day that all you want to do when you get home from work is watch TV and then knock out? Right? Like, I just don't feel like work should be that way, whether you're an entrepreneur, a 9-to-5, or any other kind of job. It should not be like that. It just shouldn't. There should be balance. And I think a lot of workplaces, at least properly managed workplaces, try to implement things that help with that, you know, offering benefits for you taking care of your wellness in terms of working out, or making sure that you aren't doing more than you can handle. But I think that it's half the job, or your job's work, and the other half belongs to you. So it could be that your job is set up such that you shouldn't be overworked, but maybe you work salary, or maybe you just really, really want to hit your work goals, and then you find yourself doing the most to the point where you don't have any energy left, and then you resent your job. So there should be boundaries that your work has established to keep you from overworking yourself, and that you establish to keep you from overworking yourself, right? So one thing I think that can cause a lot of lack of workplace wellness is comparing yourself to your coworkers, and kind of making yourself be the kind of worker that your coworker is. You can't be the kind of worker that your coworker is. And you might have the type of coworker that tries to advise you, and I say advise in air quotes because it might be unsolicited, it might be unwelcomed. They just might come to you and be like, oh, you should really try to do it this way, or maybe you should really try to do it that way. Oh, you know what really helped me? And they're just kind of talking about all those kind of things, that the methods they think are the best way. But it almost comes off in a sort of way that seems like, I know best and you should do this if you want to be the best worker. Here's the thing I've learned in my experience working with other people, is that how to do your work. You know what's best. You really do. Even if you don't think you do, you know your methods, you know your strategies, you know how to get your work done. And if somebody else wants to give you their 2 cents, I mean, that's nice. You know, they probably mean well, but do you have to take that advice and overwork yourself? Because your coworker might just want to do so much extra that they're pouring out all of themselves and then not leaving, anything left for themselves. And they might think that's the best way to work, but maybe that's not best for you. So if you start comparing yourself to your colleagues and then you end up finding that, hey, maybe they're not as drained as you are when you try to apply their methods, you'll just find that it doesn't work the same way. Like, because again, you have your own, or your own methods and your own strategies. So if you find that your coworkers do a little extra and you're like, oh, I should be doing a little extra. Well, ask yourself, do you want to do a little extra because your coworkers are doing a little extra, or because you think you need to yourself? So I think one thing is, just don't compare yourself to other coworkers. Just make sure you're doing the work that you feel like you're performing the best that you feel you're performing, as opposed to using other people as a measuring stick. So number 2, not taking on too many responsibilities. That's workplace wellness. We want to make sure that we're doing what we can handle, because if you start agreeing to help your coworkers or other people with things and then you realize you're putting too much on your plate, now what you're doing is you're not going to execute and perform as well as you could because you have all these other responsibilities. One thing I always do in my job is whenever somebody, like a coworker, asks me, can you help me with this? I always say, let me think about it, or let me actually get back to you. I'm not really sure right now. It makes people mad. It makes people frustrated. Expect that people are going to get mad and frustrated, especially if you are the type that usually says yes to everything. But let them get mad and frustrated, because do you want to be tired, and do you want to have too much on your plate that you can't do? Like, you'll find that you can't do, and then who's going to be in trouble? You, not them. You. So I always do that. I don't care if it takes me, I'm a little bit indecisive, so I don't care if it takes me 5, 10, 15 minutes. I told you I'll think about it and I'll get back to you. It sounds a little fiery, sounds a little feisty. I do have a Sagittarius rising, so that's where that comes from. But at the same time, I have to be responsible for my wellness first. I have to be responsible for my wellness first. So yeah, just make sure that you aren't doing things for your colleagues, your other colleagues, because you feel like you have to, or because they ask you. You have an option. You have an option to say, hold on, let me think about it, or to actually just say, you know what, I can't. I try to make it such that I know my workload at all times, so that I can just tell somebody straight away, you know what, I really can't do that. But there are times I don't know. I have to actually look at my calendar and I'm like, oh, I actually can't. And I try not to let it get to me. If I know like it means someone else is going to have to deal with the workload and the burden, but if I myself know that my work will suffer in trying to help you finish yours, I'm not doing it. I'm just going to have to tell you, I'm sorry, but I don't have room or space or time to do it. Period. Another way that we want to practice wellness in the workplace is practicing telling your colleagues, I actually have to get back to this right now. Or, like, I really need to work on this project right now, or insert whatever you'll have to be working on. So basically what I mean is, we all have that coworker who kind of comes to your office or your cubicle or whatever it is and just, starts talking about that show from last night. Sometimes I'm that coworker. I'm not even going to lie, but starts talking about that show from last night, or starts talking about their weekend or whatever. And I believe in having a little chit chat. I think that's great at work. That's another part of wellness, is being able to have relationships with the people you work with. But then there's always that person who talks for too long because maybe they don't want to get back to work, or they just enjoy your company, whatever the case. If you know that you have like a deadline coming up, or you really need to finish something so that you're not at work all day, you just got to practice saying, you know what, I really want to talk about this show right now, but I actually have to finish this. Ooh, that sounds really great. But you know what? Tell me about this tomorrow. Or tell me about this at lunch. Save that for lunch. You don't have to even be rude about it. You can just kind of let them know nicely, like, I really can't talk about this right now. So that's something I've been having to practice too lately at work, is just being like, oh, I really want to talk about that, or ooh, I really want to hear your opinion about that, but tell me about it at lunch. I really have to finish this right now. I think that'll help you a lot because it helps conserve your energy, because now you're not sitting and listening to someone for ages and hours on end talk about something when you know you need to get something done. And you're also respecting yourself by knowing that, okay, I know I need to finish this and this is my boundary. Like, I can only talk to you for, so long before I feel drained and before I feel a little bit antsy because I need to get something done. So it respects yourself, and it also helps other people know your boundaries, because once you tell somebody that, like, oh, you know what, I really would love to hear about that, but let's talk about it later or at lunch, they'll see like, oh, she's serious. She or he or they really want to get their work done. I'll get back to my work now. So it communicates to yourself and to others your own boundaries. So that's a huge one, I would say, in workplace wellness. Okay, so another one is make sure management is approachable. You want to be able to feel like you can talk to your manager about things you're struggling with or things that are not okay or whatever it is. You want to be able to feel like you can talk to your manager about that. If you're feeling afraid to speak up about things that are going on, or if you're noticing some, fraudulent activity happening in your workplace, but you feel like if you report it, you're going to get thrown under the bus, or if you just feel scared, if you should not be scared to talk to management. I have had countless jobs where this has happened to me before I decided, I'm not going to allow myself to work in a place where I feel scared to talk to the people who are in charge of me and in charge of my paycheck. I'm not doing it. It creates unnecessary stress for you. And then at the same time, you just feel like your job is always hanging on the line, depending on how you approach them. That's not fun. That's not cool. Management should be approachable, and that should just not even be an issue. I once had a manager who would yell at me and interrogate me if I made a mistake, like just heavy interrogations. She was never solution oriented. It was just always about, let me berate you for all the things you did wrong, and then let me make you scared to talk about it. So she would just interrogate me endlessly from every angle about why I did something that I did. And then she would never offer a solution for it. She would just literally be like, you should know better. You shouldn't do that. She kind of talked to me, I think, like a child. That's the best way to put it. And then every time she picked me apart, she would always tell me about how, I guess, like, her business was the best business. And I don't know, the rest of her management team is the best of the best. It was so weird. She would tear me down and then talk about how great she and her management was. And I just remember thinking, what? I was so confused. It gave me a lot of narcissistic vibes. And as soon as that happened, a couple times I was out the door. I was like, I'm not doing this. It was just, that's not how management should be. They should never be wagging the finger at you and then interrogating you and not giving you solutions. If there is a problem, they should talk to you about it like an adult, one-on-one, and then you two together should be able to work together on how you can solve something. Because when you think about it, you as an employee, you're a piece of the puzzle, just like your management. You're all working together to make a corporation run. So why should anybody ever treat you like a child or treat you like you're not an adult who's fully capable of correcting their own behavior and being responsible for their own actions? They shouldn't be treating you like anything less. Also, in workplace wellness, if you work salary, when your 8 hours are finished, go home. Just go home. Unless, of course, you have things you really need to finish and deadlines, things you need to catch up with that absolutely can't wait until the next day. Of course, stay, finish your work. But if you don't and you just feel like you need to stay and do more work, don't do that. Stay your 8 hours and go. Just believe me, you don't want to be exerting any more energy than you have to if you don't have to. If nobody's holding you there and there's no reason to work extra, don't. Because you're going to be drained and you're not going to be able to be present for yourself, your pets, your family, your significant other, whoever, if you're just always working extra when you don't have to. I'm a big believer in goals and working hard and everything like that. And I do agree some days you need to stay late at work, but not every day. Work-life balance is key, and part of work-life balance is not overworking yourself. Simply put, just don't overwork yourself if you don't have to. So remember earlier how I was talking about how a lot of times we go to work, or when we come home from work, we feel drained and all we want to do is pass out and watch Netflix and then go to bed. So have you noticed that usually when you do go to work, like right before you get in, you do have a lot more energy, but at the end, it just gets depleted? I've noticed that one of the ways my energy would get really depleted is by kind of being an enabler for somebody else's negative energy. So when I say an enabler, I'll explain what that means. So basically, if you have that one person, that one coworker who kind of likes to complain about management, complain about other coworkers, complain about the company itself, or just complain about really anything in general, have you noticed that whenever there's that person with a group of other colleagues, there's always that one person that tunes in and sits there and listens to the whole rant, and then there's other people that check out at different times and they're just like, I'm not even gonna do this. Or there's even that one person who from the beginning is like, and they just leave and don't even participate at all. Yeah, you probably want to be that person who just doesn't participate at all. Of course, I never want to tell you what to do, but I'm just advising you, if conserving your energy is one of your main things or your main priorities, when you notice that somebody's spending their time complaining or speaking badly about management or other people, just do a 180 or a 360 and go back to your cubicle, go into a break room, go somewhere. Because like for me, for example, whenever I get a little whiff or a little sniff of someone who just wants to sit there and vent about what they don't like about the company, for me, like, I love where I work. I love it. And I have no problems with anybody, in terms of, I just don't talk about people in the workplace. That's not something I do. So I don't want to be around people who do that, because I don't want to co-sign with that. Basically, enabling is almost co-signing when you think about it, meaning when you're just sitting there listening, nodding your head, kind of being like, yeah, I get what you mean about that. Nope, save yourself, just leave, because when somebody complains, you're giving your energy by sitting there and listening to and almost supporting that little complaining rant venting session. You could just excuse yourself. You don't have to sit there and listen to somebody who wants to complain, especially about a place you may like. And if you don't like it, which, there's a lot of us who don't like where we work, I think it's still going to take your energy too to sit there and listen to that, because what's going to happen is now they're being upset about or complaining about something is fueling your anger and your upsettedness. And now your whole view and your whole perspective of the day is just going to be centered on, I hate my job, I hate my boss, I hate everybody. Whereas if you just get away from that energy, you're probably not going to be tuned into that idea of, I hate this, I hate that. So in both ways, you are conserving your energy. Okay, so another way to stay well in the workplace. How many of you have that one colleague who, whenever lunchtime or break time swings around, they want to tell you their life story and the drama of the week that's going on in their life, and they kind of want you to play the therapist for them? But it's like every lunch though, or every break, right? So I've noticed that whenever that kind of situation happens with me, I'm usually, I don't know about you, but like when lunch comes around or break comes around, that's my me time. Especially lunch, like if you clock out, I clock out. So that's literally actually me time, because I'm no longer on the clock, right? So I don't mind chit-chatting with my coworkers. I do it all the time, but I also don't want to have a therapy session every single lunch. So what I usually do is I plug in my headphones. Yeah, I'll plug in my headphones, and then they might still try and talk. And then I'll just say, I really want to watch this. I really want to catch up on this. If I don't want to put my headphones in and I'm not actually watching something, sometimes I'll just say, like when they proceed to tell me their story, I'll just say, I really don't know. I hope you figure that out, but I'm really not sure what I would do in that situation. And I kind of say it firmly to let them know, like, hey, I really care about what's going on with you, but I also don't have the answers. And you probably shouldn't be asking me, because it's not going to be a worthwhile effort, because I won't be able to help. So I would just suggest being like nice but firm. You really can't help. Just say a simple, I'm really sorry about that, but I'm not really sure what to do. Hope you figure it out, but I'm not really sure. That goes a long way. Or like I said, just even plugging in your headphones and just letting them know, hey, I really actually want to catch up on this podcast or watch this show kind of a thing. And for the last way to be well in the workplace, I just wanted to mention making sure to eat lunch or eat snacks or drink water. I get shocked by how many people I notice that aren't keeping up with fluids throughout the day, especially if you're at a desk job. If you're not, this is kind of hard. It really is hard to get fluids in if you're like, I don't know, if maybe you're a nurse and you're walking back and forth on the floor, or you just can't have water in the treatment area or the hospital area, wherever you are, or if you just work a more active job and you just can't have water around you. I totally get that. But when you do have your breaks, make sure to drink fluids. Like, you can get really tired from not drinking enough fluids. Dehydration will make you sleepy. And then just making sure to eat things. I can't understand. I personally don't understand how people can go an entire workday without eating. It makes me worried because I'm worrying like, oh, are you getting enough energy? I mean, are you having enough energy? You're probably not having enough energy if you're not getting that food in, those carbs in. And now I'm talking about food and fluids now because, like I've said before, I am a registered dietitian. So this one's really important for me to get across. But please make sure to drink some kind of fluids and eat some kind of food, because you need to be able to have the energy and be awake and alert to be able to be your best self at work, right? So those were some of my tips for staying well in the workplace. I hope you learned a new thing or two, and thank you for tuning in to this episode. I will catch you next week.